Did you know that
I'll be back
wasn't actually what that line was supposed to be? Let's take a trip down memory lane and dig up the dirt behind the scenes secrets from Arnold's biggest films. And there are plenty more secrets where that came from, including Arnold's personal favorite of his movies. Spoiler alert, it's definitely not the one you think.
Allow me to break the ice.
Most of us agree that The Terminator was Arnold Schwarzenegger's most iconic role. Interestingly though, the role almost wasn't his. Schwarzenegger was actually brought in to play Kyle Reese. The Terminator was set to be played by none other than O.J. Simpson. According to Schwarzenegger, director James Cameron felt that Simpson was not as believable for a killing machine. Yep. The irony is lost on no one. And apparently, there's even concept art that shows the characters as O.J. Simpson. In fact, Schwarzenegger actually has a Terminator painting that Cameron created himself, and Simpson's face, which was painted over with his own. Pretty crazy alternate universe stuff. Despite his iconic character status, the Terminator is a man of few words. That's under 100 words, actually. In the first film, he speaks only 17 lines to be exact.
45 long slide with laser sighting. I'm a friend of Sarah Connor. Nice night for a walk.
Even so, we all know the one that made him famous.
I'll be back.
This line has some interesting history. It was originally written as I'll come back. And while this line has the same exact meaning, it's somehow far less threatening than the line we know and love. Furthermore, Schwarzenegger admitted in an interview that he wanted this line changed to I will be back, since he struggled to pronounce I'll. Cameron said no, and reassured Schwarzenegger that they could do as many takes as necessary to get a good one. Suffice to say, they did. Audiences first heard the line in 1984 when the movie premiered, earning $78.48 million at the box office. This number doesn't land the film in Schwarzenegger's top 10 highest grossing films, but it's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it has to be at the top of our list. Plus, it did pave the way for some of his films that did rack up the most at the box office. Like Terminator 2: Judgment Day. This movie premiered in 1991, 7 years following the original. We know what we're all wondering most about the behind the scenes from this movie, so let's get it out of the way quickly. No, Schwarzenegger was not actually naked in that opening scene. In fact, far from it. He was wearing a colorful pair of shorts. According to director James Cameron, he walked in wearing the loudest pair of Hawaiian print board shorts that he can. The wardrobe choice left everyone in the room looking down in surprise. Who would have thought that's what they were really looking at? If you saw this movie, you likely remember the ending just as well as you remember that intro. Remember how hot this scene looks? Well, it actually wasn't hot at all. In fact, it was in the 40s when they were filming, so how did they make it look hot? Fake spray-on sweat. Yep, movie magic is amazing. And this movie was chock full of it. From a miniature city and people that were created to get blown up to show the nuclear explosion to life-size replicas of Schwarzenegger and co-star Linda Hamilton that they proceeded to destroy. Yikes. All the destroyed replicas were totally worth it though, since this film scored a whopping $519.8 million at the box office, and a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines didn't do quite so well in terms of its Rotten Tomatoes score. It only scored a 69%. It still managed to earn a whopping $433.4 million at the box office though, luckily. That made it. So the staggering $29.25 million Arnold Schwarzenegger was paid to return for the film in 2003, over a decade after Terminator 2, wasn't too high a price. That said, his contract also included an extra $1.5 million allocated to a laundry list of perks, including bodyguards, a full gym, hotel suites, private jets, and limos. Oh, to be a major movie star.
I love it.
Despite the fact James Cameron didn't return for this film, like the past Terminator movies, Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines worked with lots of practical special effects. The T-1 robots were all actual robots that weighed a ton each, and were built specifically for the film. A team of 5 puppeteers who worked off-screen were used to operate each one of the 3 robots. Most of us remember that Terminator Genisys didn't premiere until 2015. And you may also recall that it wasn't exactly as beloved as the films that came before it. It scored a measly 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. Still, while it didn't reach the scores of the previous films, it earned almost exactly as much at the box office as Terminator 3. Rise of the Machines with $432 million. Schwarzenegger was 67 years old when Terminator Genisys premiered, and if you're wondering how he managed to look just as buff as he had for the previous films, well, he had it down to an exact science. For 6 months, he worked out for 3 hours a day, and by the time they started shooting, his weight and measurements were exactly the same as they had been while shooting Terminator 3. He still has someone else playing his younger self though, bodybuilder Brett Azar. And now on to something a little more kid-friendly, Kindergarten Cop. This beloved movie premiered in 1990, and despite what a departure it was from Schwarzenegger's other roles, he called it his favorite. Aww.
Which is your favorite film of your own?
I think Kindergarten Cop, probably.
We can see why, though. This movie looks like it was a ton of fun, and some other A-listers must have predicted how much fun it would be. Schwarzenegger was in very good, albeit surprising, company when going for the role. Robin Williams, Kurt Russell, and Chuck Norris were also in the running to play Detective John Kimball. Once Schwarzenegger landed the role, he put more of himself into the film than many of us really realize. The star had a list of themes he wanted the film to touch on for him to agree to be involved, from bringing light to the importance of physical education to more challenging themes. It's clear that Schwarzenegger's influence bettered the movie. It earned $201.9 million at the box office and 53% on Rotten Tomatoes. Total Recall also premiered in the 1990s, but these movies are very, very different. Patrick Swayze was the original lead for the action flick, but when production was cancelled, Schwarzenegger was the one who convinced the new production company to pick it up. It also happened to be one of the last major movies to use miniatures, rather than CGI. This might be why it was the second most expensive film ever made at the time. Still, it managed to score $261.3 million at the box office, and an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. End of Days came out nearly a decade later, in 1999, and while it did fairly well at the box office, with $211.9 million, it didn't do nearly as well with its Rotten Tomatoes score, earning only 11%. Yes, End of Days was not a fan favorite of Schwarzenegger's films, but it did mark a new beginning for the star. It was his first film in 2 years after having heart surgery following his role as Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin. Studios had been worried about his health too much to cast him. No! But End of Days proved his health was back on track. As for Batman and Robin, this film premiered in 1997 and earned $238.2 million. It was pretty heavily disliked, scoring only 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. Still, despite the flop, about which the film's star, George Clooney, later said, "I think we just killed the series," Schwarzenegger kept it cool, literally, this time. As Mr. Freeze, he delivered 27 ice puns over the course of the movie.
All right, everyone. Chill. Freeze well. Stay cool. What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age. The Iceman cometh. Cool party.
As for a movie that we assume has 0 ice puns, don't fact check that, there is that scene about the ice cube trays, after all. True Lies premiered in 1994. It earned $379 million at the box office and a 70% Rotten Tomatoes score. But it almost earned something much, much less pleasant. Schwarzenegger's end. During the horse riding scene, the star was in an accident that nearly ended very badly. The horse he was riding became out of control after something spooked it. Schwarzenegger slid off the horse next to a 30-foot ledge. Luckily, his stuntman saved him. Sounds like something straight out of one of his movies. Eraser premiered 2 years later, in 1996, and earned $242.3 million and scored 42% on Rotten Tomatoes. The role was first offered to Sylvester Stallone, but he turned it down since he allegedly heavily disliked the script. Well, this wasn't an issue for Schwarzenegger though, for whom the team made multiple rewrites. Still, many folks consider this film to be the ending of Schwarzenegger's beloved action era. So what do you think? Did you agree with the ranking, or did the box office get it all wrong? Let us know in the comments, and for more videos like this one, be sure to like and subscribe to The Things.